Magandang umaga, ako po si Trixie Cruz-Angeles. Ito po ang Luminous. Mahaba-haba kasi yung biyahe ko ngayon, so I am going to go live as usual to save time. So, good morning. Kanina po sa Karambola, may discussion tayo on, ano ba to? On yung mga iba-ibang issues na yun na lumilitaw sa Justice Department. Wala naman issues, yung magandang ginagawa sa DOJ. But at the same time, may mga iba't ibang nangyayari that have hit the headlines pagdating dito sa mga crime issues. Hi, Kuya Rhea. So, halimbawa, yung hazing ng which resulted in the good morning, Ma'am Janet. So, which resulted in the death of a 24-year-old engineering student named John Matthew Salili, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I pronounced that right. So, dun sa at nabuhay na naman ang mga diskusyon tungkol sa fraternities. So, but let's start with what we can and cannot do. Yes, we can have a law banning hazing and so on, and that's, or at least regulating the activities of fraternities. At meron nga tadalo na revise na yung original na batas at ginawang mas stringent at kinikilala nito ang mga community-based fraternities, hindi lang po yung mga fraternities that are school-based. So lumawak na po yung coverage at mataas na ang penalty, reclusion perpetua po para those who are directly involved doon sa hazing that resulted in the death, particularly in the death or injuries and so on. May pananagutan din ang mga school officials dahil po kailangan they're on top of the situation. They should be present at the hazing, at the initiation, and they should be documenting it. So ito po ay mahahalagang maaalala. But maraming nagsasabi, marami na naman po tayong nakikita ng mga komento at nagsasabing dapat i-ban ang fraternities sa schools. Actually, the issue with regard to banning fraternities is that it runs afoul of the constitutional guarantee of the freedom of association. Kasi pag binan mo nga naman sa schools, they'll still get together, but now wala na pong official na nakatingin sa kanila. So the same with community-based ones, you can't, it's not wise, kumbaga, to ban certain types of organizations because yun nga, number one, may guarantee ang ating nasaligang batas na nagsasabing mayroon tayong kalayaan na mag-associate to form groups provided that the association is not contrary to law. So, and it would be contrary to, you cannot make a law that would be contrary to the Constitution. So, ano lang ang mga groups that are actually being banned? Well, number one dyan, yung mga terrorist groups, of course. So, fraternities per se, because they do have a legal purpose, they cannot be banned. But, and that's what Congress did, ginawa nila ng paraan para i-regulate ito. And based on, ito na nga, nahuhuli na natin yung mga incidences na ganito. And it's actually good news. Good but sad and terrible circumstances. But nahuhuli yung mga gumagawa nito. And they are actually being punished. Ngayon, hinigpitan lalo yung batas at tinaasa ng penalties. Ngayon, anong ini-expect natin as a result of this law? Titigil ba ang mga ganito? Ako, hindi ko iniisip na matitigil siya, but it could fall out of favor at posibleng mag-ingat na ang gumagawa nito. Ito, sabi ni Ma'am Joan, kanina sa Karambola nag-comment si Attorney Kapunan na hindi raw nagko-cooperate ang senior frat members in UST kaya hindi umuusad ang kaso ni Atio Castillo. Okay, but I have to find that out. Siguro kausapin ko si Attorney Kapunan and get her side on this one, get her take on this one. But yes, I understand na kasi it's a law fraternity so ang dami po sigurong nagsistrategize ng mga lawyers in the prosecution of this case. However, what I can say is that in the other cases, tapos na po and na-prosecute at nakakulong na po yung mga responsible for this. So if you remember correctly, dun sa Aquila Legis cases, may ilan silang nakulong and Dahil mas mababa pa yung penalty at the time, some of them nakalabas na po dun sa kulungan. Sabi ni Ma'am Janet, like and share na po. So thank you Ma'am John for bringing that to my attention. Hindi ko po nakita yung comment ni Attorney Kapunan, so I think I'll call and see if I can get an interview with her. Sabi ni Ma'am Maureen, kapag nila yan sa school, lalong magiging problematic. At least now, may mga magbabantay at may batas for them. Dapat lang siguro mas maging proactive sa implementation ng batas. Actually, marami nga pong opinions na lumalabas tungkol dyan. At sinasabing in the end, yes, enforcement talaga ng batas. But since the state or the government is not present during these initiations, at least the schools should be. Tapos in the case of the community-based fraternities, sororities, and other associations, yung barangay po ay nire-require na maging present dyan. Now, hindi pa complete yung mga facts about the case of John Matthew, pero, ay hindi lang nakakalungkot ang daming sayang. Sayang ang buhay ng namatay, sayang ang buhay ng mga makukulong dito. Sayang yung mga future nila, and at such a young age, ayan na, you're facing the end of the road. You're facing imprisonment for life. 30 years, makakalabas sila sa kulungan, they will be in their 50s or 60s. Ano pong buhay ang meron sa labas niyan? It's terrible to think about it. Kaya kailangan din nalaganap yung pagbibigay natin ng impormasyon. At kasama po tayo dito. May kakilala tayo na gustong sumali sa mga fraternities. Encourage them to stick to the law. Sabi ni Ma'am John, the actual words ni Attorney Kapunan is in denial daw sila. What do you mean in denial? Dinideny nila na ginawa nila o dinideny nila na namatay sige, I will find out, Ma'am John. Thank you for that. Ay, nako. The reason the law has to be so stringent is because yun nga most of the time, this involves kids or very young adults na we don't want them to lose their entire future on a single night or a series of nights na hindi nila masyadong napag-isipan. Ito sabi ni Gentle Fist Gaming, anong say mo doon? I think you're going to have to may request na lang ako na if you're going to ask a question, wag naman don't choose words that sound hostile already to me. So yung mga gano'n, ansay mo, ano masasabi mo sa gano'n? It's it means that I always have something to say, or it's medyo hostile ang dating. So I will answer your question, but ang request ko na lang is next time to phrase your question a little gently. Kumbaga gentler. So okay. Yes, this happens. The investigating officials will invite you, or in the case of the NBI, subpoena you to go to answer a series of questions. Now, when you're there, if you are free to go, you're not in custodial detention, and therefore hindi ka pa i-apprise ng rights mo and so on. Hindi ka arestado. Now, at any point, whatever it is you say, gagamitin naman sa iyo yun. Hindi ka lang nire-require na sabihan ng iyong mga karapatan until you're considered detained. Ngayon, ang kinaiinisan yata nila is yung style. In-invite sila for questioning, tapos biglang inaresto sila doon. They can actually challenge that sort of arrest. Kasi maaari lang maaresto if may personal knowledge yung arresting officer dyan, or even if it's a civilian, that a crime has been committed by this person. So, or has probably been committed by this person. So, nung pumunta sila, it's possible that the investigators believe that they had enough evidence to conduct a warrantless arrest. Ngayon, ang requirement kasi ng warrantless arrest ay may personal knowledge, at saka immediately before, immediately after, or during the commission of a crime. So dito, the crime had been committed over 10 days ago. Tapos, ang knowledge ng police officer or the investigating officer would have been, should be something like may confession, inamin nila yung ginawa nila and so on. So kung umamin sila, then that arrest would be legit. That arrest would be legal. Although it can always be challenged, no? There's no such thing as something that's unchallengeable. It's whether or not you have basis for that challenge. So in this case, I would argue, if I was the defense counsel, that this was not a valid warrantless arrest and that it requires the personal knowledge of the investigator, and that personal knowledge should come from the actual witnessing of the event. Gayunpaman, for the moment, because of the presumption of regularity on the part of the investigators and the arresting officers, you can only bring up that argument at the proceeding before the prosecutor during the inquest or before the judge if ma-file na yung kaso. So, yung sabi ni Vincit, yun ba yung red-handed? Red-handed means you're in the act. Pero kasama sa warrantless arrest yung immediately before or immediately after. Yung mga tipong papasok pa lang yung kamay mo dun sa cash register, hinuli ka na. Enough na yun. So, yung mga paulit-ulit na tanong, once na lang namin sasabihin, bakit may initiation pa? Well, it's a strategy for creating a cohesion, creating unity. Meron kayong sinishare or meron kayong pinagdadaanan at magkakasama, and this commonality results in camaraderie, which results in yung parang bonding experience. You're bonded by a common experience. Now, this strategy is used all the time, of course, in the military, but it's also used by government officials. So, your government officials will create, yung kumbaga, ihihikayat, he will create a story around itong pinaghihirapan. O, lahat tayo, sabay-sabay nakadanas ng martial law. So it creates that how do you call this? The semblance of a common experience. And because may common experience, you identify with each other. Now, I call it a strategy because it doesn't always work. Now, sometimes there are people who will say na I went through initiation pero hindi ko feel. Pwede yon. But in general, it has been working for many fraternities and sororities and other groups. Hindi lang naman po fraternities ang may mga ganyang parang hazing type activities, no, or initiation rites. So, sabi ni Ma'am Maureen, so dapat pala ang mga local government ay mas maging active sa pag-monitor ng mga group or fraternity sa lugar or school. Hindi po. Iba po yung pakikialam ng barangay. It's for community-based, non-school-based fraternities. Dapat po ba may official na may mag-check on them from time to time, and parents should be involved too. Here's the problem. Pagdating dun sa parents kasi, question pa rin yan, because in theory, these kids are over 18 and therefore are presumed to know what they're doing, to know the consequences of their actions. Particularly pa, many of them here, in this instance, are over 21. So, yun yung, these are the issues na sama-sama dito sa kaso ng mga fraternities. So, remember that for non-university, non-school-based fraternities, ang dapat pinagpapaalaman ay ang barangay at dapat may nakamonitor na 2 officials at nagdo-document ng initiation. Sa schools, it's the school officials. Sabi ni Mon, I also do not understand why anyone would want to go through these initiations. I've gone through the same recruitment and I never found the need to join any fraternity. I also don't believe about the need for initiation. We're no longer in barbaric times. Unfortunately, sir, not everybody thinks like you. And remember that these are kids, If it is true what psychologists say, is that the complete maturity of the brain only happens at 25 years of age or older, then they will still have issues making informed decisions. So, And what I would like also everybody to understand is that not everyone thinks the same way that you do. Yes, you don't understand. But for the kids involved here, it was perfectly logical or perfectly fine for them to join, even if it would go through rights like these. Now, a lot of the kids, they're looking for homes. A lot of them, yung mga lalong-lalo na those who come to Manila or go to the provinces to study there, they're displaced. They're looking for homes. They're looking for family. So that's why they join these groups to get a sense of belonging, a sense of feeling they're part of something else, something bigger than themselves. So while you may say that you don't understand, these kids, even if they're below, they're like at 24 years old, they still require our understanding, and they don't always get it from us. And so they will seek it from somewhere else. Sabi ni Sir Tony, there are many ways to bond meaningfully that are shared among frat members and frat applicants. But why use physical pain? Well, because, like I said, it's a strategy. For them, it's a common experience. And that common experience involves physicality. So, is this a failure daw of the educational system? Sabi ni Monday. Well, I guess it's a failure of a lot of things. Maybe it is also a failure of the education system, which means that we're all involved. You don't leave education of the kids only to government authorities and only to the teachers and only to the schools. Ano yung kasabihan? It takes a village. So, kasi kahit tayo. So, yung in the 70s, what our what our parents, I suppose, or some of the teeners or the adolescents of the time or the young adults at the time would complain of what they called a generation gap. It means that their parents who had gone through a totally different experience could not understand what they themselves were also going through. Now, the parents of the teeners then, or the young adults then, were old enough to understand the implications of war. So, dumaan sila sa giyera. And therefore, sila yung mga can do, they'll do this, they'll do that. And now they're confronted by a generation that has not experienced that or had experienced it in such a different way, or even worse. In the US nga, the young adults, the 18-year-olds were being sent off to Vietnam. They were being drafted to go to war, while their parents willingly went to go to war. So those are different things altogether. So what is necessary for us, and often even parents fail, is to understand that we cannot impose our own values and our own actions and our own thinking on a generation that did not grow up under the same circumstances. So kahit noon sa law school, I argued with some of my professors when they kept saying, well, during our time, kaya naman namin, bakit kayo hirap na hirap? Sabi ko, during your time, it was easy to live near campus. Things were mas mura nung panahon na yon. You didn't suffer the kind of traffic jams that we go through. The pollution wasn't so bad. You had parents who stayed home to help you out and so on. It's not the same. Stop comparing. It's not the same. And that's the worst thing that we can actually do, to alienate, in order to further alienate the people who should be coming to us. So yung mga nagsasabi niyan, hindi ako sumali ng frat. What are you saying? You're smarter? Are you saying that you make better decisions? Well, maybe you do. But does that help the kids who will automatically shut you out and say, yeah, pero you're not me. You're not here. You're not getting the kind of peer pressure I'm getting. I cannot resist it the way that you did. But how does this help? How does the conversation of saying, well, I didn't do it. Well, I made this decision. Ito si Joseph Ray. Sabi niya, I'm a frat man, but nowadays, a misconception of brotherhood, gang man ang karamihan. That is far one of the most interesting that I've heard. And I agree. I think based on your experience as a frat man, you experience the brotherhood that these kids might be looking for, and you're not seeing it anymore. I think that's a more reliable basis for comparison. Sabi ni Sir Tony, out of topic, your answers might contradict mine, but I'm amazed how you enlighten me. Thank you. That's possibly one of the best things I've heard today. No, you know what? I'm a little sad because of parang napuno yata ng bad news kahapon, 'di ba? With the OTS issue, and then with this kid, 24 dead, and his so-called friends or people who were going to be his friends panicked and facing a life imprisonment, 'di ba? Na nakakaano, plus yun, pinakinggan ko yung hearing sa on the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and I'm so parang okay, the danger is becoming more and more real to me, but yan, hold on, kapit lang ng konti, we need to keep our cool. So, sana habang bata pa, sabi ni Ma'am Joselle, ah, turuan ang mga anak natin na huwag sasama sa mga ganyan, at sana open ang anak at mga magulang sa isa't isa. Pero mahirap yan sa mga OFWs na mawalay sa mga anak nila. Nako, yun nga talaga eh. And I agree. That's why ang gusto ko talaga, ang hinihikayat madalas, maririnig mo kami sa Karambola, is we're always talking about the economy. We're always talking about improving our own production, improving the lives of Filipinos by making sure we don't put in policies that are ruinous. Because itong mga ruinous economic policies, yun yung nagre-resulta ng diaspora. Kaya maraming nag-OFW because, let's face it, very few can actually earn to make a decent living, and that's why it's always going to be attractive to go abroad. And personally, I think that ang sakit ng choice na yon, 'di ba, for parents na ma, iiwan mo yung mga anak mo para mabuhay mo sila. For me, yung parang Sophie's choice yan eh, yung parang imposible papapiliin ka na ganun yung only left choice sa inyo. The choice that is left to you is something so terrible as that. We want to see this country improve, especially economically, because we don't want that to keep happening. And it does result in family issues, 'di ba? Sabi ni Ma'am Ying, oo nga, nakita na lang namin na madaling araw na yung hazing, and grabe magkaiba yung mga instances now at klase ng response ng tao ngayon. Iba di tulad noon na iisa lang at yun at ay to do what is right. Yeah, yeah. Of course, kasi modern discussions now are what we call more nuanced. Ngayon, nakikita na natin that, even if you have just, the one side is very clear, there's so many things na mamaya makikita natin, like, while we're absolutely sure about the mistake that these kids have done to their fellow fratman, uh, you can't help it eh, pero more and also everybody lost here. They have lost what remains of their youthful days. And even if we feel so about them, even if I feel badly for the parents of John Matthew, and for the parents of the kids whose lives are already destroyed. Sabi ni Sermon, this kid should be taught fraternity is a sign of weakness. Um, I that will be an opinion. Sabi niya, they need these groups to survive, to have friends, to belong. We need to teach our children to stand on their own. But we're also still social beings. I'm not sure I agree completely, because part of being human is being part of a group also. In fact, that's how we evolved. Then don't get me started on the evolution of Homo sapiens kasi di tayo matatapos. kahit gaano ka ka-worldly, di mo maiwasan magulat pa rin at manlumok. Mapapaisip ka kung anong nangyayari, bakit gano'n ang naging galaw at decision, what brought that out. Oo, talagang ano. Ito, sabi ni Ma'am Janet, sakit sa dibdib to kasi lahat tayo talo sa usaping to. Totoo yan. Walang panalo dyan. Kahit ang society tayo, we're deprived of the bright futures these kids had. What if one of them was a genius? What if all of them were really good? What if all of them could have done the next big thing, made the next major invention and so on. Diba? Tapos na. That's it. End of the road. So, sabi ni Rara Avis, making the right choices should be drilled into the youth. May pros and cons yan eh. We can't say there's an absolute formula for this. What we can is give them all the information so that they will make the choices that are more obviously correct. Now, kasi there are other things going on eh. There are some people who are taught you have to make the right choice, you have to make the right choice, do this, do this, do this, and only this. They become risk averse also, unable to make, they're bound by convention. And we also need kids who know how to color outside of the lines. But not with regard to the law. Sabi ni Cloud9, how can we show love by hurting them? That's the paradox of parenthood, ano? So, grabe, napapaisip tuloy tayo eh. But that's very interesting, question. Eh, wag ganon. Frat isn't a weakness, sabi ni Ma'am Ying. It's a matter of perspective and choice kasi humans will always want to belong. Ito, mas yung ni John Chester Gayeta, bakit kailangan pa ng nakakamatay na initiation? None of them ever set out to kill anyone. That's not the purpose. Pero, ay nako, para sa akin, yung mga activities that bring you close to the possibility of death, yan, that should be drilled into their heads. Consequence. The law of unintended consequences is always present. Sabi ni Deadman, dapat magdala sila ng medic on standby kung ma-hazing sila. I actually know of some fraternities that bring doctors. Yung mga blood nila na doktor, sinasama nila sa initiation para andun. At saka, nararendahan, the presence of a doctor also forces everybody to na rumenda, kumbaga. Kasi ang nakikita ko dyan is they just lose control of themselves. And pero it's they tend to lose control over themselves. And that's something that needs to be checked. And if you're incapable of doing that, there must be somebody there, whether it's their brads or some adult or whatever, should be around to tell them to put the brakes and be the one person that they accept to say, no, not this, don't do that. Dapat may advocate, di ba? Alam niyo yun sa in government institutions, in some government institutions, well, in many, they set in newspapers particularly, nagtatalaga sila ng ombudsman, something like that, somebody who can tell the management na no, you're doing it wrong, hindi pwede yan. Yung kunwari, merong reporter, tapos masyadong maangas yung story niya and all that. May magreklamo about the reporter. Yung ombudsman is the person who has to make the objective decision between the paper and the person na nagreklamo. So kung there's always that one person that you empower to say no, to put on the brakes. Sabi ni Ma'am Judy, good morning. I'm late but so glad to catch you live. I think there's some kind of shadow banning. Yes, ma'am, especially sa Facebook. So you have to like and follow doon sa Trixie Cruz-Angeles na page instead of Luminous. Oh, don't unfollow Luminous kasi it's temporary according to Facebook and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. It's unusual daw yung problem nun sa Luminous along with 700 other pages on Facebook. Ito sabi ni Among Us, brotherhood is having a second family and doing what the mission and vision of that brotherhood is. Marami lang talagang nalilihis. Nadadama yung mga matitino. That is true. That's why, it's easy for us to isolate this and say, bakit ganyan? Hindi dapat ganito, hindi dapat ganito. But if you look at it, there are also families, actual blood families, who have problems and who end up doing unspeakable acts to each other. So we can't really, kumbaga what I'm appealing for here is a sense of proportion. That yes, these kids must go to jail. It's the law. But that we must also feel compassion for anybody else who might come along and think the same way. We must compassionately deal with them so that they will understand that an incident like the initiation, which is the lack of compassion, the lack of empathy, these things happen, and that they must be prevented from doing so by persuading them. Ito sabi ni Sir Robert, a couple of days ago, a gang of 10 to 12-year-olds ganged up on another kid here in Baguio. The kid picked up a knife and stabbed two of the gang members. Now, some are blaming the absence of policemen in the area, while some are blaming the barangay officials and parents. Yes, because at 12 years old, the discernment clearly is not there. But if you're going to blame people, you may as well also blame circumstances. How commonly we see acts of violence passed off as entertainment and so on. We can't even stop it. It's out there, it's there already. People are showing acts of violence on movies, and we make classifications, but the internet is harder to police. Uh, so yes, I think everybody is to blame, and therefore nobody is. So the parents should have been more watchful, etc. Or kulang yung pagtuturo, the school authorities who did not inculcate it. Maybe the kids themselves, maybe there's a genetic predisposition. We don't know. But what we know is that all of these might possibly have come into play. The absence of authority in the area and so on. All of these led to that. So what remains? What do we do? Well, ako, in our own way, we have to keep making things better lang for for all of us, not just for to prevent these things from happen, but for a better quality of life. Like, can we make other alternatives available? Like, I know that for me, books worked when I was a kid. I was a lonely kid. And the only way that I could um, survive in school was to spend a lot of time in the library and and read because there I had a world where I had friends. I had friends much later, but when I was growing up, I couldn't even go out to socialize with neighbors because we live in Cubao, di ba? So and these things, di ba, it's either fraternities and then in other instances it's drugs. So we just have to keep making things better and providing alternatives. Sabi ni Ma'am Debbie, ang benta kasi nila doon ka naman papaluin sa part daw na hindi nakakamatay. Magaling ang mga frat mag-recruit. First, they lure you with their mission, vision, kapatiran, and service. Hmm. Well, I can't say all kasi I know so many frats with so many different means of getting in. Sabi ni Sir Francis, the code of silence pag may ganitong nangyari sa mga frat is terrifying. At tapang manakit, walang gustong managot o magsumbong. Hmm, isa pa yan. Diba? Because it's a matter of survival for them. I find it's so, for me, it's depressingly sad. They're not my kids, but they could have been. De, parang ang parang ang sakit isipin Sabi ni way I see it, ano kaya may regulation dun sa extent ng pahirap na gagawin sa tao uma-undergo ng initiation. Nandun po yan sa batas. Larangan dapat may nag-witness ng right. Nandun po yan sa batas na nagko-control para hindi humantong sa pagsawi ng initiate. Nandun nga po yan sa batas. Didn't happen in this case. So let's see also kung ano ang alam ng university. Yan ang missing factor pa natin dito eh. So, okay. Pero the good news is, nabasa ko kasi yung intentions ng DOJ. And parang feeling ko narinig tayo eh. Remember what we were saying before na iinis ako dun sa mga nagkakaso, let's say sa ating mga law enforcers, lalo-lalo na when they're doing well. So, may hinuli, drug lord, laki ng ano, mamaya kakasuhan na yung law enforcer na yun. Nyek, bakit? And in many cases, these are frivolous cases, pangganti lang para matisod, para hindi sila ma-convince or hindi sila ma-motivate to go after big fish. Para hindi sila kumbaga, parang reverse motivation. Magiging averse na sila kasi may risk na makakasuhan sila, nagiging averse sila to doing their jobs. So even if their jobs require a certain amount of risk, yung risk na yun, hindi, madali sabihin, sige, ni-risk ko buhay ko, ni-risk ko yung, possibility of bodily injury. Pero yung makasuhan ka, ibang level ng torture kasi yan, pag ikaw na yung, pag ikaw yung akusado, ikaw yung respondent, and it's much easier to deal with physical pain than the uncertainty of your future. And so, nakita ko na, sabi ng DOJ, tataasan na nila or i-review nila yung pag-determine ng probable cause para yung mga cases that are frivolous don't anymore proceed to trial. Alam niyo, masakit yan for those who are in the civil service. Kasi, yung finding of probable cause, magagamit yon para matanggal ka sa civil service. That's enough evidence to remove you administratively from your job. So, nakakaano yon, di ba? So, that's a big threat. So, these cases, they're big threats to the civil service, not just law enforcement, but to the civil service itself. Kasi you could be doing your job, pero kakasuhan ka, and you have to go through all of that just to show na wala kang maling ginawa. But the problem of going through all of that is nadidistract ka from doing your job at nagkaka-reverse effect, kumbaga nagkaka-effect of you not wanting to do your job well anymore. So, it's nice to see na nire-review na ng DOJ yung quantum of evidence para doon sa probable cause. That way, yung mga pangganti, mga frivolous cases, yung mga, hindi, pride cases na, pride na lang talaga, kailangan kasuhan ko tong taong to kasi napahiya ako, those cases will be weeded out or at least as much as possible dahil nga ngayon nire-review na nila kung ano yung mga requirements dyan. Kung ano yung mga pwedeng maging quantum of evidence para tumuloy sa hearing yung mga kaso. So, ang daming dito nagko-comment kasi hindi kayo members ng frat. What I really want to hear are yung mga members ng frat. We're not hearing their side. Kasi it's not really as you think. They didn't go out to hurt this person irreversibly. Yun ang masasabi ko. That's something that we all know. They went into that. Pero grabe the risks that they took. And in fact, kahit hindi mo intention saktan you put yourself into that position to hurt this person and you took it. Ito, maganda yung sinasabi ni Jax. Isa sa reason bakit di ako sumali sa frat dahil ayoko sumali sa gulo. Lagi may frat war sa school namin noon. Nakikita din ako na iniwan lang din yung isang kasama nila na ginugulpi ng kalaban nila. Diba? Parang yan Parang US-China yan Sasali ba tayo sa gulo? Diba? Sila yung nag-aaway. Magpapadamay ba tayo? Ito. So, ito hindi nakinig si Ma'am. Had J. Michelle Andaya Ducio. Dapat pagbawalan mga fraternity na yan kasi kahayupan yan. Sinabi nga ma'am hindi talaga maipagbabawal yan kasi freedom of association yan. Sinabi na po ng Korte Suprema. So, and the answer isn't banning them because isisikreto rin lang nila. And that's harder na, mas mahirap, uh, mas mahirap, how do you call this? Mas mahirap kontrolin pagka hindi, wala na, unofficial na sila, underground. Sabi ni Deadman, meron bang frat si BPM? Alam niyo, the president has not made a comment on this kasi para sa kanya, it should go through the regular processes. So, hi Ma'am Emily. O, kayo ba yung kanina? Thank you. Thank you sa Thank you dun sa Ferrero. Ha 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 ha. Kakainan man ako mamaya. Ito sabi ni Sir Dennis, yung pumasok ako, may 1 month na service kami sa mga members ng frat, then bigyan ka ng sked for initiation. Tinatansya nila if kaya mo pa ba o hindi na. Pagkita nila, nahirap ka na, tigil agad sila. Papahingahin ka, tapos papakainin. Ito sabi ni Sir Tony, nakaranas daw siya may putukan na habang papasok ako sa klase. Yung mga frats nun sa UP, grabe nun yung Upsilon at Sigma Rho, barilan daw talaga sila. I don't know what UP did, pero natapos din yun. Natapos yung period na yun. I think naging mas stricto sila. Sabi ni MJ, true, it's better if frats or sororities are acknowledged by the universities or the schools. Yes, kasi may ibang nakatingin sa kanila. Hi kay Ma'am Pinay, sabi niya, after my multiple health issues, so grateful for the gift of life. Birthday ni Ma'am Pinay, di ka namin nabati kaninang umaga sa Karambola. Happy birthday po. I hope you have a good day. Great day. Diba? So, sayang sana may pa-cake kami sa iyo. Kasi ang bait-bait ni Ma'am, she's always here at saka ang gaganda ng comments niya. Sabi ni Ma'am Ying, kaya nga, kung kaya nila hazing sa frats, I don't understand why some complain on CAT and ROTC when they're just a walk in the park. Oo nga, oras lang ang kailangan. Tama yun. Sobrang tama yun. Galing. Okay. Gusto ni Sir Jonel, mag-comment ako dun sa kaso ni Sir Raffy Tulfo, disqualification, pwede ba yun iakyat sa Supreme Court kahit denied yung case sa COMELEC due to jurisdiction? Well, kung it's a if or when. If yung petitioner believes na may jurisdiction ang COMELEC or may grave abuse of discretion, yes, pwedeng iakyat to a higher court. On the other hand, kung yung court mismo, kung tama at wala na talagang jurisdiction ang COMELEC, then the venue should be the Senate Electoral Tribunal. So, hindi ko masasabi which one is appropriate here kasi, well, hintayin ko siyempre yung action ng petitioner at tignan natin yung grounds nila. Sabi ni Bumi, so till Sunday or Saturday ba with SAS? Can't wait. Lalo na sa mga sinabi ni Senator Amy kahapon, she really recognized yung coming war by saying about shelters and all. So, well, we will see. We will see kasi hindi ko pa na-arrange kay Madam Sas. But yes, I really would like to have another joint live with her. Ang galing-galing ni Sas, di ba? Kaya di matanggal ang frats, sabi ni Dudes, karamihan ng matataas na tao sa politika ay naging member ng frats. Pwede. Sabi ni Roslini Manansala, if freedom of association ng fraternity na hindi pwedeng mawala, can the Supreme Court prohibit the hazing part? Hindi po Supreme Court ang gumagawa ng batas. They only interpret it. But in this case, meron na nga pong hazing law, anti-hazing law, at pinagbabawal po yung pananakit, yung at saka syempre yung mga actions that can cause death or bodily harm. Sabi ni JM, si Atty. Bayan yata abogado ng asawa ni Rafi. Yes, I understand that he is. So, let's see. I would like to see what his next steps are. Subaybayan natin yan. Sabi ni Sir Owen, ay, kay Ma'am Pinay pala yan. Kaya, hindi talaga tayo malayo dun sa hazing, ano, sa ano. But, sige, instead of talking about it, I think kailangan eh. You know what, sometimes ang feeling ko is that people need to talk about yung stuff like this kasi it affects all of us. Kahit sabihin pa natin na, di ba, many of us galit. Some of us parang nasasaktan for these kids and nasasaktan for the parents and so on. Okay. Sabi ni Ariel Gasil, wala akong believe kay Sas. Marami siyang paniniwala na parang mga leftist din. Sir Ariel naman, hindi ba may freedom of religion and belief and faith din tayo? But the thing about Sas is she supports her opinions. So I have to disagree with you. Number one. Number two, what exactly are leftist opinions? Kasi para sa akin, we have to challenge. Yun yung tinuturo talaga sa amin. Well, the higher up you go in the academic ladder, the more you are required to challenge what is there. So that's how knowledge is created. That's how we make discoveries. So you challenge the popular opinion. You come up with new doctrines that challenge existing ones. This is called learning. This is called making discoveries. We can't allow our society to stagnate. And so you cannot classify ideas as leftist and so on and actually ban ideas. In fact, the law prevents that. Yun dun sa libel, ideas have no copyright and ideas are libelous only if they destroy a person's reputation. Tinatanong ni Ma'am Roslini Manansala, maiba lang po, what's your view on EDCA? Do you support it or do you support SAS's views? I think what I'm saying is that EDCA, we have already entered into that. We are bound by it. And so I cannot blame any president for implementing it. However, next year is an opportunity to get out of it. And I would like the Philippines to get out of it. Yon. So it's a little, the I think SAS's issue with the EDCA is simply the timing of the additional EDCA sites. So, yung some people kasi have overblown her prediction based on her thesis. Kumbaga, thesis isn't a paper. A thesis is like a hypothesis, a guess that is supported already. So ang thesis niya is that this action could possibly bring us to the brink of war, if not war itself. It puts us in harm's way, or it increases the risk of the country being involved or being used as a proxy in this war between two giants. And so ako, I think it is supported by doctrine. It is supported by the actions of the US itself. However, the inevitability, I don't agree, and the possibility, well, there's still things that we can do. Kasi like one, we can get out of the MDT in 2024. Ito. Hindi kaya matrigger ang China sa gagawing biggest balikatan sa WPS? Well, since we don't live in a vacuum, definitely China is going to see that. I'm not sure yet, nor can I predict how they're going to interpret it. Now, the Chinese government has an audience. Now, they could possibly be thinking that, well, we shouldn't do this, or, well, it would be more diplomatic to not say anything. But they must also cater to their own domestic audience, which means yung mga constituents nila, they have to make the right noises, the right statements, and the right actions to please that audience. So for me, hindi pa ako sure kung ano yung hihingin ng kanilang constituents sa Chinese government pursuant to seeing something like the biggest balikatan exercises, di ba? So, yun. And maraming salamat. Malapit na ako sa meeting ko kasi. Maraming salamat na I'm here in Manila. I came from Pasig and I'm going to an event here in the Manila Hotel. Kaya nakabihis ako. So, malapit na po. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng nag-participate dito sa sa ating conversations. This is really, for me, it's very enjoyable. And it also helps us deal with the collective feelings about the things that are happening nowadays. Maraming salamat for all the input and all of the questions that also help me learn and point out to me where I can study more on the topic. I'll try to go live again later kasi mahaba na naman ang biyahe pa uwi. So we'll see you possibly this afternoon or this evening. Doble ingat po ang lahat. And can we show a little kindness to each other? Can we show a little understanding? Yun lang po ang hihingin ko in the coming days because ang daming nangyayari that are worrisome already. And ang nangyayari is nag-aaway-away na lang dito online as a means of dealing with things. Pero ang request ko na lang is that everybody try to show a little kindness. Kahit a little lang every day, then so that we can make it a habit. If there are bad people out there, we're not going to be one of them. So maraming salamat sa pagsubaybay ngayong araw na ito, nitong live na ito. And thank you very much for participating and being here with us on Luminous all the time. Thank you.